Dear friends and guests of the German Center of Venetian Studies, dear participants of the Festival Internazionale di Letteratura a Venezia, Incroci di Civiltà 25, caro Direttore Flavio Gregori, cara Francesca Varotto, dear Juergen Boos, in brief and all-inclusive, dear all, good afternoon and a warm welcome to the Palazzo Barbarigo della Terrazza, where 2 years ago we welcomed also the renowned author Cornelia Funke as guest of honor during the Regatta Storica, who drew us this wonderful drawing with these wonderful interacting books that you see on the screen here. It is a great pleasure for me to see our institution once again involved in the prestigious Literature Festival of Venice, the guiding principle of the Centro Tedesco, where scholars and artists live and work together, is almost a reflection, eine Widerspiegelung, un rispecchiamento of the festival's motto: encounters, cultural exchange, and open dialogue in the mirror of this wonderful city of Venice. It is exactly what culture is and what it creates, protecting us from falling back into barbarism. Books make civilization, the title you chose for our conversation today, continues a very central statement. I would like to thank not only the festival, but also our other cooperation partners, the Frankfurter Buchmesse and the publishing house Marsilio Editore. And now I briefly hand over the word to my colleague Petra Schaefer, who is also responsible for supporting our fellowships, including each year 2 writers. One of the writers is Nora Haddada, who is also with us.
Grazie, Richard, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As promoters of art and cultural studies, our main goal is connecting artists and researchers, as well as building bridges across disciplines, cultures, and institutions. As you can imagine, our institute's long-standing efforts have led also to encounters with Frankfurt Book Fair honorees. Allow me to mention just 2 recent examples. During her residency in 2007, the German poet and novelist Katrin Schmidt worked night and day, as I heard, on her novel Du stirbst nicht, You're Not Dying. Since its first publication, it has been translated in 13 languages, among English and Italian, and was German Book Prize winner in 2009. 10 years later, in 2019, Professor Aleida Assmann and her late husband Jan, outstanding cultural scholars and winning of the Peace Prize of the German book trade in 2018, gave a talk here at our Palazzo titled Wahr ist, was uns verbindet, True is what unites, which is based on their Frankfurt acceptance speech. We were grateful that Aleida and Jan then expanded their version on Venetian topics, which were published, reviving our Italian-German bilingual book series, Quaderni. This project and our many bilingual events bridges cultures and languages and thus contribute to the transnational discourses fostered by Incroci di Civiltà and by the Assmanns. Cultures, Aleida writes cross-border through the import and export of books, through translations, appropriations, and reinterpretations. Through the contact with other cultures, they merge into each other, inspire, and modify each other. End of quote. Given the enormous importance of books for intercultural understanding and the transmission of thoughts, one could make an even stronger claim: book make civilization. And with this, we welcome Juergen Boos, Flavio Grigori, and Francesca Varotto. The stage is yours.
So first of all, thank you for the hospitality. Thanks to Richard Erkens, director of the Center for the German Center for Venetian Studies, to Petra Schaefer, all of the friends who have basically invited us to be here in this wonderful Palazzo. This is one of the most beautiful spots that we can count on. Secondly, I would like to ask for forgiveness, in a way, for imposing English as a lingua franca for this conversation. We are in a German institute. We should be meant to speak German here, but my German is so weak and so laughable that unless you wanted to laugh all the way through, it's much better that we use this lingua franca. So for all the German-speaking people, my apologies. But I think we can wade through the waters of the language. This is a very special encounter, special meeting and conversation in the series of Incroci di Civiltà, because it's the first time that we have as our guest a president of a book fair. Book fairs are very important for those who deal with literature and culture, because they are the basis for our possibility to put our hands on the books. Of course, there is also open access nowadays and the internet and so on and so forth, but we are all very, very keen on books, on these well, this is not a book, but on these printed things, and hope it will be so for many, 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 many years, decades, and centuries, and eons, or whatever we like. We wanted to have this conversation for a basic reason, as you probably heard yesterday, if you were at the introductory opening of the festival. That is, the Frankfurter Buchmesse, the Frankfurt Fair, a book fair, has become a partner of the Cesare De Michelis Award, which is awarded yearly to an international outstanding publisher, and we'll probably hear about that from Francesca very soon. And they became partners this year. Actually, it started in 2024 because the award was announced in Frankfurt in October during the Messe, during the book fair, and it was awarded yesterday to Louis Schwartz, who is here and who I would like to thank for his presence. And I take advantage of this to remind everybody that at 5:30 p.m. in the Auditorium Santa Margherita, we'll have the conversation with Teresa Cremisi and Michael Kruger. So, Juergen was so generous as to take our invitation to come over to Venice and to converse with us about the importance of book fairs, not only as places of commerce, but also as places where culture and, we'll come to that, democracy is fostered. So my first question for Juergen, who has a long-standing story of a relationship with book publishing. He started as a publisher or working for important publishers in Germany, Karl Hanse, Springer, etc. The first question is, if I may ask Francesca, to tell us about the Frankfurter Buchmesse, also with regard to the spreading of culture in Germany and worldwide. I mean, the Frankfurt Book Fair is the most important book fair in the world. It's where people go, to do the proper things. But as I could see last year, it is also a place where culture is distributed, restituted, given back to the audience.
Thank you so much for having me. I love to talk about Frankfurt, so you have to stop me when I'm getting too far away from our topic. No, I have to go back a bit in history. The first documents we have on a book marketplace in Germany go back to the 15th century, to Mainz. If you hear Mainz, you think of Gutenberg and printing, but the first marketplace for books was before Gutenberg. Yeah, so there were already manuscripts being sold and shipped on the river all over Middle Europe. And this book marketplace stayed for many, many years in Mainz, but then it was the seat of the bishop and there was censorship. So to answer your question, suddenly books already became 500 years ago political. Yeah, so there was always a trade aspect to our business. There was a political aspect, obviously. Yeah, it was about freedom to publish. And there was a cultural aspect, as we all know, yeah, because we love reading. But then the book fair moved to Frankfurt, where it stayed for many centuries. Then it moved to Leipzig, which became the center of the German book trade, also a European center for Middle Europe. And then the Nazis came, and there was no publishing anymore. A lot of publishers left Europe, went to New York, or went to Buenos Aires, went to many places all around the world. But in 1949, we started again to have this book fair in Frankfurt. All of these publishers, most of them Jewish, who came back to wanted to see what has happened in the meantime in Germany. So in 1949, Frankfurt became immediately international again. I think this was very important. Yeah, it was always about being political, being a marketplace, being cultural, being international, because stories do travel. Does this somehow answer your question?
Yeah, thank you very much. I mean, this is a very fascinating answer, also because it takes us back in time, and I think the city of Venice is a proper place to say that, to remind that, because of Aldo Manuzio. So we have something in common, the spreading of literacy and culture through the books. And before then, the manuscripts, I didn't know that detail, and it's fascinating that manuscripts would be shipped away, as we do with Murano glasses now. So shipping manuscripts, I wish it could be like that even nowadays. Coming closer to our times, what's the, we all know that, the Frankfurt Book Fair is very important, but apart from knowing it, we don't know how. And the reason, not so much the reasons why, but how, in which ways it is so important for all the people who work in the publishing industry, but also for the people who read.
Yeah. So this is quite loud now. I think Frankfurt is different from all the other book fairs in the world, since it has this very strong business-to-business aspect. It's about dealing with rights, dealing with intellectual property. And we have people from 140 countries coming, and I spent the last 2 days in Bologna at the Children's Book Fair, which is a B2B market, business-to-business marketplace as well, for children's content, because we are talking games, we're talking film, we're talking merchandise, we talk a lot of stuff, and behind that is intellectual property. So Frankfurt does have that as well, but on top of that it has the general audience. And I think what is also very important, nowadays it's a bit difficult, challenging to say that, it's a safe harbor from people all over the world. Because we're talking about books, we're talking about storytelling, which can be told in many different ways. But these people who would probably actually trying to find a narrative for their country. So literature is also about national identity. Find a joint narrative in a culture, in a country. They would give up on that in Frankfurt and just talk to each other and listen to each other and accept there might be people who are completely different. And I think this makes Frankfurt so special. It's not focused on one topic. It's not only focused on the trade, but it's also focused on the cultural aspect and these political aspects. How can we live together, which brings us back to the topic of the festival. How do we want to live together? And we can live together many, many, many different ways. And we can talk about it in many, many different ways, but we have to listen to each other. And I think the most important thing of all, that Frankfurt is also a festival for readers. And without the readers, we wouldn't exist at all. We wouldn't be here tonight.
Thank you. If you know the figures, how many countries come to Frankfurt at the fair, roughly?
So we have about 300,000 people coming to Frankfurt. We have trade visitors from about 140 countries. Yeah, we have, that's a good question, I have to look for my colleagues in there. I think we have exhibitors from maybe 120 countries coming.
So all over the world.
It's all over the world, yeah, and right now it's shifting sometimes, yeah. We used to have a big Iranian presence, and out of obvious reasons we don't have that anymore. So what's happening in Frankfurt is also somehow mirroring what's happening in the world. We don't have a Russian official stand anymore. We do have trade visitors, we do have publishers from Russia, but if we would have them next to our friends from the Ukraine, we would have a serious problem. But as long as we are moving ourselves around in Frankfurt, again, this is a safe harbor. But sometimes for some countries, they want to be seen officially, but the publishers and the writers would want to be seen.
I have a curiosity about that, now that you mention it. Publishers from North Korea, do you have them? Did you have them? Have you had them? Or do they come?
Many years ago, actually, when I started at Frankfurt, my predecessor decided to have South Korea, as guest of honor. And at this point of time, I had the naive idea we could bring North Korean writers as well. So we've asked the South Korean government to get in touch, on the German ambassador, whatever. It didn't work out at all. Yeah, you can imagine. North Korea said, no, we are not going to send any people. What actually happened, they sent 2 people because they had experts in how to renovate buildings like this in North Korea. So actually, the government sent 2 North Korean experts on how to restore a fountain in the middle of Frankfurt.
That's great.
And this was very weird to us because we thought this would be a wonderful idea, and the South Korean government reaching out. But at this point of time, I cannot see any North Korean participation, which brings us back to our topic. Yeah? Are we prepared to listen to each other, raise our voices? And if we don't want to listen, yeah, then we are in the middle of a fascist system. Yeah. North Korean?
North Korea?
No.
Sorry.
No, the question was, are there any publishing houses? Yes, there are. Think of education. In that sense, there's publishing houses who produce school books, textbooks, yeah, mostly. But it's not in the sense as we have it, because history gets rewritten. Yeah? If you look into a North Korean textbook, you read a completely different history when you look into a South Korean textbook.
But
yeah?
have you heard of some fiction, for example, or nothing?
No. There are some expatriates who would write,
Yeah.
but not from North Korea originally.
I'll leave floor to Francesca.
No, I wanted, since you asked for figures, I found you had 150,000 trade visitors coming from 153 countries and 4,300 exhibitors coming from 92 countries. So it's pretty much, I mean,
but again, it's not
definitely the biggest and the
it's
most
not
important.
It's not about the numbers. Yeah, a lot of people say, oh, the largest book fair is in New Delhi or is in Sharjah in the Emirates. Yeah, but I don't think this really counts. I think it's about the relevance, and that's why I love to work for Frankfurt.
And we are, of course, we at Marcilla are very, very happy for this new association, for the Cesare De Michelis International Award for Publishing with the Frankfurt Book Fair, which is definitely the biggest and the most important book fair in the world. That you had. And actually when Luca De Michelis was here in the audience, started, it was only 4 years ago, started this award. He already knew I think, the wide scope you wish to give to this award. And I know also, of course, that you know personally all the 4 winners so far, because they faithfully attended the book fair for decades. They so far represent a big part of the world. We have the first winner coming from Asia, Navin Kishore. The second winner came from Europe, and he's sitting here, Michael Krüger. And the third winner comes from North America. Fiona is also sitting here, Fiona McRae. And this year we have Luis Schwartz from South America. So it seems to be... Sorry? Bravo to all of you. It seems to be very coherent that I say the most international publishing fair in the world, and this is since 1949, as you said, is now associated to this enterprise of Marsilio. So, very easy question, a few words from you on how you see the Cesare De Michelis Award within this huge amount of activities, of numerous activities that you have in Frankfurt with the Buchmesse, and how do you think we can join efforts together to develop it and to develop it worldwide?
I think Frankfurt is not about the product. It's about the idea of publishing, and it's about the people behind the books. So it's about the authors, mostly. It's about the readers, it's about the translators. And we tend to forget the role of the editor, of the publisher, which is a very important role. When I was trained as a publisher, they told me we have a curating function because we have to select the titles we want to publish. When I was talking to Louis for lunch, or yesterday as well, he said, I worked in a publishing house, and then I decided I want to do something for my country as well. I want to publicize literature which is relevant in Brazil. And that's a curating function. You decide. Then there's a quality function, which we shouldn't forget. And there's an economic function to it. There's a distribution function. But I still believe the 2 most important functions is this curating and quality. And believing in the importance of bringing books into the world to the reader. I think this is what driving us. I still feel myself as a publisher. And this is also civilization. It's again about democracy, opening other worlds for people, agreeing on how we want to live together, but then we have to accept that other people maybe choose a different way. And that's why we need books. So I think the role of a publisher is very, very important. And we have all sorts of publishing. We have academic, we have school books, I mentioned it. We have literary publishings. We talked a lot about the role of poetry. So there are many, many different ways on how you can publish in. But when you look into Frankfurt, we have many awards for translators, French to German, English, whatever. We have many, many awards around the world. I'm working in Abu Dhabi, the Sheikh Zayed Book Award. So we have many awards. We have the German Book Award, we mentioned it. But I cannot think of an award for a publisher. So I think this is a wonderful initiative, actually. And actually starting this here in Venice, I don't know who said it, that this is always used to be a marketplace, a city of trade. So I think it's perfect to have an award for publishers coming out of Venice, coming out of Marsilio. So thank you very much for starting this initiative.
Yes, I mean, you see that the motto, I think, or one of the mottos of the book fair, the Buchmesse, is that the book fair is the capital of ideas since 1949. So ideas are at the core of the Buchmesse mission, seems to be. So it's of course a place for exchange, for trade, for business, for selling, for buying. But it's maybe first of all a place to exchange ideas and opinions and to open a new perspective on the world. And this is also what is the core of the project of this award that we started 4 years ago, to translate cultures. I mean, to bring cultures from one country to another to exchange ideas. But how do you think it would be possible to put this into effect? I mean, all publishers that have been awarded so far made their ideas the driving force of the publishing houses. I mean, there are fantastic lists based on their personal taste and personal ideas. But now that it's so wonderful to have them all together, to have the opportunity to have them around the same table, how can you implement this? I mean, how can you put this into effect? What do you imagine this award could become in order to be something useful for the publishing industry and for young publishers? Or
what you're aiming at is actually of having role models, whether it's Louis Schwarz or Michael Krüger over there. I always wanted to work for Karl-Heinz, many years ago. Yeah, you worked for Karl-Heinz, I did work for Karl-Heinz. And this was because of the personality of these publishers, because they were having this quality, this curating function, and they stood in with their own personality for that. But actually, what we've been seeing in the past 20 years, it's a commercialization on the one hand, it's a consolidation in our industry. You have a lot of small publishing houses, with very, very passionate publishers. But if you can do 5-10 books a year, you cannot survive on that. It's about passion and the thing of passion, of Leidenschaft, You invest all your time, but you will never make big money, there's this old saying in Germany. How do you make a fortune? If you have a very large fortune and then you go into publishing and then most of your money is gone, Publishing was always driven by cash flow, you know that, You first have to spend the money, you have to buy the rights, you do the translation, you pay the author, You have to you have to set up a distribution system, and then after 2 years' time, hopefully you can sell a book. And if you look into German's history of the book selling, or about Europe's system, it always, which brings us back to Venice, publishing followed the money, and the money followed the trade. They went up the rivers, from the Mediterranean to Lyon, from Lyon to Frankfurt, from Frankfurt to Leipzig to Prague. And you can see the big bank houses, the private banks in the 16th century, This is where you would find the publishers. Publishers always needed money to make some money or to spread their ideas. And this is quite an interesting aspect which we tend to forget. We say it's literature. We have to be passionate. But actually we also have to make money so we can make more books to bring more ideas to the world. And I believe if we have some role models, and that's what this award is aiming to, ideas like me when I wanted to work for Karl-Heinz, so we have to follow ideas, and think this is the objective of this award. And we have to be very attractive as an industry for young people. My son always told me, no, I don't want to be in culture, I don't want to work with books, I want to become rich. Now he's in private equity. You can see that. Maybe the next generation will go back to books, My uncle was a bookseller, and I said, I want to work with books. And he said, never become a bookseller, become a publisher. This is where the money is. It's not true, not at all. You have to do what you're passionate about. And I think this is the role of this award, to see that there's something where we can be passionate about.
A model.
Can you hear me? Speaking on that, we'll go back to the presence of so many countries and people speaking so many languages and publishers from so many countries and languages. I think one of the most important aspects of an international book fair is to bring together various languages, to have them translated from one language into another, etc., and to, if I may use a word à la mode, cross-fertilize countries, rather than transforming all the activity of publishing and writing and reading, etc., into one simplified language, as, for instance, the internet tends to do. So the question is, what's the relationship between a book fair and the internet? It's a large question, but you can take from whichever viewpoint you like.
From whatever point I like. It's quite interesting because I spent my last years in academic publishing developing business models for online journals. Yeah, and when Australia had like 17 subscriptions, 40,000 euro each, when we had the electronic journal, they said, oh, we need one subscription because we can give it anywhere. So we lost 16 times 40,000 euros, gone. Yeah? So we thought, how are we going to survive? But then there came a new business model up. Actually, the internet, or right now it's more about artificial intelligence, can be helpful, yeah, if you use it wisely. I was in New York earlier this year and talked to the heads of houses of the big publishers, and they all told me, I expected them to say AI, artificial intelligence, is going to be the most important topic. We have to talk about this autumn in Frankfurt. And that number one is audiobooks, because we're struggling with the business model, streaming services. How do we make money as a publisher? And number two was book banning, which brings us back to the political dimension. Yeah? And usually Europe tends to follow, like 3 years later, what we're seeing in America, it's going to happen here. So the biggest threat was a book banning, self-censorship. Yeah? We are scared to publish. Yeah? Or we as the authors are scared to write what we want. Yeah? Because somebody might step in, and there might be a censorship. And then number three was artificial intelligence. And everybody told me, we use it for workflows anyway. And for simple translations, we use it. So actually it's done. There might be coming up new legal restrictions, but actually artificial intelligence is not a threat. It's a threat regarding freedom to publish. And we also have to identify when it's a machine writing and when it's original content, because there it's getting difficult. And who owns this content? Yeah, is it the people who has the machine owns this content, which is newly generated? So it's a very complex situation, but we'll find a way. I've heard in my years in publishing, the printed book is going to go away. It never went away, never ever. Yeah, we're selling more books than ever worldwide. If you look into some regions in the world, we can speak of the golden age of publishing. Now India has realized that it has 50 official languages. Imagine how many translations are now taking place in India from one language to each other. Yeah? We in Europe, we tend to buy a lot of American English language rights. It's a one-way street. Yeah? But there's so much local translation business happening. I think it's the most interesting times we can have in publishing.
Thank you. I entirely agree with you. The censorship and banning books, which probably are going to be implemented, more and more implemented in the US, not in all states, but most of them, seems to be the threat. And some writers have started to signal that. So far as the publishing industry, possibly it's a direct threat once you are no longer allowed to publish, of course, but it could also be an indirect threat, because banning then fosters self-censorship. People do not write anymore, or write what governments want them to write. But first, is there room for real liberty in a book fair? I'm pretty sure that there is in Frankfurt, but since you know many book fairs all around the world, do you find the same level of freedom elsewhere? other places which somehow challenge the government and this threat of banning as such? I mean,
so for Frankfurt, we are luckily in this situation. It's a democratic country, and the role, if there's anti-Semitic content, if there's pluralism, yeah, then there's a law stepping in, yeah, and everybody in Germany can go to Gericht. What's Gericht? Can go to court and say, no, this book, yeah, shouldn't be there, because we have a constitutional law and this clearly defines what can be published or not. But saying that, I would say in most of the countries in the world, this is not really true. This is not happening. We also have a role to promote German literature abroad, so we attend other book fairs as well with the German collective stand. And we are seeing boycotting of German authors, we are seeing books which disappear on our stands, which get censored or taken away, yeah, in China and other countries. Yeah, so really, I think Frankfurt, Italy as well, is in a very lucky situation, yeah, that there is no state censorship in this sense. But on the other hand, saying that, there's a lot of people who say, you shouldn't present this author, yeah, he's too right-wing or he's too left-wing. Why do you let him on your book fair? Yeah, but Frankfurt does have a monopoly, yeah. If somebody's not allowed to attend Frankfurt, he cannot be part of the international publishing industry. So I cannot leave anybody out as long as he's not against the laws in Germany. So it's a very easy and clear definition. And this is the same here, yeah. So everybody's free to attend. And I'm not a publisher. I'm not able to curate. I cannot curate Frankfurt. Yeah, this is really a different role. You can decide what you want to publish. We cannot decide who's going to be present. On the contrary, we want diversity. We want all the voices.
Thank you. That means that the possible role of a publisher, as a publisher is envisaged in the award, in the Cesare De Michelis Award, is a publisher who is equally free, that is able to decide, but having the freedom, not only the personal freedom to decide, that's easy, but the freedom of the audience. So taking the audience on the shoulders in a way.
Yeah, it's not this easy. Again, you first have to have money, yeah, before you start publishing. That's another role. You can be very passionate, but you also have to see what your readers want. And then you can have sort of a mixed calculation. I can do my personal favorite titles, but I need to have other titles, yeah, which support these. Yeah?
But this is, I think, the healthy balance of each publishing house. I mean, Louis Schwartz this year, we know he succeeded always with very literary titles as well as commercial bestsellers. So it's a very healthy balance you reached. Fiona maybe has a more literary list behind her, but it's always been quality supported by, maybe also trying to find what readers wants to read. So, we cannot publish only what we like. I mean, only a few lucky publishers, maybe independent or also small, and as Juergen both said, with money, can just do whatever they like.
But I think it's a bit more complicated nowadays. Yeah, in the past, you could have a balanced list. Yeah. Right now, what we're seeing in Germany, we have small growth, yeah, all over in the industry, but it only comes from what we call new adult or young adult titles. So 20% of the revenues in Germany go to a very small target group. Yeah, young readers. Yeah, and which is crazy. And with the money you make there, then you can do other titles. But Michel might know it better, or Louis Schwartz as well. To be on a bestseller list in Germany, in the past you needed maybe 40,000, 50,000 copies. Now sometimes 10,000 copies is enough on a literary bestseller list. Yeah.
In Italy it's less.
Even less, okay. Yes. But this is worrying, isn't it? Yeah, because you can sell hundreds of thousands of copies of a new young adult novel, which could be written by artificial intelligence.
Well,
And on the other hand, we're struggling.
Yeah, that's true. And in Italy, among 8,000 new titles a year, you have only 3,000 selling over 2,000 copies. So it's really, 2,000 copies is already a good result for literary fiction, of course.
I think, Louis, you told us yesterday that in Brazil you had about 4 million people who are functionally not able to read. 4 million people. 20 million. It's a lot more because I was wondering, so I misunderstood it. Because we have at least 4 million in Germany, and 4 million is about 85 million people in Germany. So I have to calculate, it's 5%. So it's about the same, yeah? 200 million people in Brazil? Yeah, so it's 10% people who are not able to read. So what I'm also saying, yeah, we have to have an award to be a role model, yeah, for publishers. But I think even more important is to get the people reading, to get the young people reading, not to forget. And this cannot only be a role of the school system or the government, no. We have to be interesting enough, yeah, we have to bring... And not only via TikTok. Yeah, that's another story we could talk about.
I think that's the duty of education, first of all, that brings governments and the states on the fore. Because in order to have children who want to read, you need to teach them not only how to read, but to read first. Which, of course, can be done by several subjects, but first of all by the system itself, by the state, schools, etc. So, here I simply want to stress, that state education, publishing market, the role of culture in general, etc., are intertwined.
They are intertwined, but we cannot leave it to the state alone, yeah. I think in my history, my German publisher friend or some of the international, we tried to be quite pessimistic always. I think we should be a lot more proud and optimistic about the future of publishing. And we have to tell people how important it is. Yeah? If you look into Netflix, if you look into the serialization of content, so I would say 20% is written by Harlan Coben, anyway, all the crime stories. Yeah? And if I'm traveling to a country, I want to go to Romania now. I first started now watching Romanian TV series, which are all based on books somehow, to get an insight. So I think last year we had about 200 scouts of these streaming services in Frankfurt. So we shouldn't think of using our book as a printed book only, but we should talk about storytelling and be proud about storytelling, and stories can be told many ways. And if everybody's watching Netflix or everybody's having these new adult titles on TikTok, in the end it's a story, it's a book we are talking about, and we should be a lot more prouder how a book is part of a society. And if this would make it probably more attractive to young people, if it's a good thing not to drive a Porsche but to have a book. Cool.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, literacy is a matter of, it's a multitasking matter. But going back to artificial intelligence, if I may, and then we go back to to publishing and the award. You said that it's not the top threat. It's third in the list. It was third in the list. But artificial intelligence, is larger than simply producing texts. Artificial intelligence produces narratives of many kinds, produces images, produces fake news, produces fake videos, and so on. So it is a threat on the one hand. Much depends on who uses it ultimately, not so much at the level of simple people like us, but people who actually put together the big data. How can books, the printed stuff, the material, physical things, interact with that? Not passively. I know it's possible to write a book using artificial intelligence, and probably it's happening already. But how can it actually interact in the sense of more active interaction. Can books teach something to the people who work with and also take advantage of the artificial intelligence?
I think now I have to get a bit philosophical as well.
Yeah, of course.
Dialectic thinking means it could be like this, it could be like that, yeah, but I have to make up in my mind. This will also help us to deal with artificial intelligence. It's up to me to decide. So we have to train our readers, maybe by books or allowing them to have access to a diversity of books, to train them to understand what might be artificial or where the big data puts the algorithm. So it's about, how would you say that? Trained readers, yeah, or readers who understand that I don't have to believe everything. I know so many authors who make up things. And
this is a very old story. I mean, I'm personally an expert in 18th century studies, and it happened already in the late 17th century, early 18th century, when printing became spread over the countries, or the country which I know better, which is England. People took for granted whatever was printed because it was printed. It was true because it was printed. At the time, printing was like probably a photo nowadays. I mean, our generations tend to take a photograph for granted for what it is, and it's very difficult for us to believe it is untrue. Probably the new generations know already that a photograph, by definition, is not entirely true. So it's this long-standing story of adapting, to media. So the printing media is being superseded by different medias, which digital ones, basically digital mentality. So probably the new generations will be able to differentiate a little better between what is true, what is untrue. Probably it's the watershed now, the in-betweenness now that makes the overall world complicated and also liable to some form of dictatorship. I didn't want to mention him, but I need to mention, what Elon Musk has in mind is basically that, using this wonderful tool, because artificial intelligence is a wonderful tool, but, to basically be the boss.
yeah, but actually what you've been saying is this has always happened. But what's happening now in the age of internet, we can reach out to a lot more people and we can reach out to the world. When you've seen, there's this mirror in this room over there, and I was told that Rainer Maria Rilke wrote about this mirror, and he's seen himself in this mirror. And when he wrote of one of his first book, Die Weise vom Kornett, Rainer Maria Rilke, the young people in the First World War had this book as a romantic idea to die in the war. Yeah, so there's something strange happened. Yeah, they read this book and felt, yeah, I'm part of a tragic, heroic story. I have to move to war and I'm getting killed and everything's fine. This is so stupid, yeah? So books can be tempting. And what you've been saying as well, yeah? This is now happening in a digital age. And if I want to follow Mr. Musk, I can do that. So I think it's more important to get critical thinking back in its important place.
Maybe we can go back to the to the book fairs now, because it's very interesting also what the Buchmesse is doing with other book fairs around the world. This very big networking. How do you work with other book fairs around the world? Are you cooperating only? Are you owning part of them? Are you very active also in organizing and financially supporting? Or
one of my predecessors started actually a club of book fair directors worldwide, and it's a very exclusive club. And to be very honest, at that time this club had quite some money because the Soros Foundation gave a lot of money into it. And one used to meet in Bellagio, which all of you know, in Como. Very nice place, Grand Hotel. So these times are over completely. But actually, which led that there was a network when I joined already of book fairs around the world. And since we've been the grandmother of book fairs, we helped implement other book fairs. So we helped get the book fair in Mexico started, in Guadalajara, and people got trained in Frankfurt. So there's always been a network. And if one of these book fairs does have an issue, which is mostly political, we would come to help, write petitions, do whatever we can, create publicity. So this is wonderful on the one hand. On the other hand, as I said, our mission statement says we have to support publishing worldwide. So we always looked in Africa as well. What can we do there? And there used to be a sub-Sahara book fair in Zimbabwe, and this book fair died, so we thought we have to do something, that there's a marketplace in Africa. So we started a book fair in South Africa, in Cape Town, together with the South African Publisher Association. This book fair in the first year was profitable. Everybody needed this book fair. Yeah? And then Mr. Zuma came, and the book fair died. Yeah? This is, you see, if there's a repressive, if there is a repressive government, you have to fail. Yeah? We helped start a book fair in the Emirates, in Abu Dhabi, a joint venture 50-50, but then the politics changed and a foreign company was not allowed to be a shareholder anymore in the Emirates. Yeah? So we stepped out. So there have been many ways, but I understood finally it's not up to us in Frankfurt to start book fairs worldwide, but actually we have to enable local people, to create these marketplaces for the trade, again, as a cultural...
How do you enable those people to create book fairs? I mean, financially only, or also bringing people who can show
financially,
how it works?
I would love to have some more money as well in Frankfurt.
It's more that you show how it works and you teach people.
It's most about training, having people in Frankfurt. It's about exchange, bringing people here. And right now we do a lot of training worldwide, how to sell international rights. We just had a team in Kazakhstan, which is also an interesting in Central Asia. After 30 years, they are working on their national cultural identity. It's not a former Soviet republic anymore. Now they're developing their own identity by books, by culture. I was talking to a young publisher, a lady in her early 30s. She said, I'm struggling because my kids learn in kindergarten and school, they learn a Kazakh. I grew up in a Russian. So there's one generation in between who already have a problem with language where you have to translate. Chingiz Aitmatov was always a Russian also for me when I was young. Actually, he's Kazakh, So there's so many things happening which we as publishers, you as publishers, actually, we can help, And Frankfurt has this role to bring all these ideas together and show where something is missing or how can we do it. This is our role.
And also bringing very unknown literature like this from Filipina that you are going to host this year. So it's also a mission.
I think that's the common ground of the book fair, publishing houses and literary festivals. I think that's the common ground, bring together basically, to put it down to keyword, it's bring together. You were mentioning to me before this conversation that you also have a plan or an idea of creating a network of festivals or places, or not so much literary festivals, but other cultural activities that could take advantage of the support to some extent of the Frankfurt Book Fair. Is that correct?
Yeah, but what we've seen in the past 10 years, especially, that you can tell stories many ways. I mentioned the streaming services, but book to screen is getting more and more important. So everybody's looking for content, and who owns this content? The publishing world. The authors, they own this content. So we have to create new marketplaces, and we tried that 20 years ago with the Berlinale Film Festival for the first time. And I said, let's have a round table between film producers and publishing. And we invited everybody to Frankfurt, and everybody didn't come, but they sent in lawyers. So I had a round table of 20 lawyers sitting there who didn't understand each other's business models. If you do a film, it takes you years to get the money. You have to script writing. It takes you years. We as publishers have to do a new list every 6 months. So we didn't so it took us another 10 years till we finally organized the marketplace at the Berlinale for that, and in Frankfurt, and it's really taking off. We do that as well with the Cannes Film Festival. It's called Shoot the Book in France. They're more dramatic than we are. It's called Books at Berlinale. And we're also in contact here with the Biennale. I had a meeting this morning with our friends from the Biennale. Turin Festival has been doing that for book fair, has been doing that for 20 years. And I thought now, instead of being competitive, we need to join forces. So there's the film world or the screen world is a lot smaller than the book world. It's only a few thousand people out there, who work with screen content. So why shouldn't we create a joint database, promote these titles? And if Netflix is buying a title from Poland, they're going to distribute it all over the world. They're better organized than we are, so we can learn from them as well. We also have a cooperation with the Bologna Children's Book Fair, which is about gaming. So it's not the big computer games, but there's a lot of gamification education literature as well. So the two book fairs, they are specialists in children and young adult. Frankfurt is the most international one, so we help each other to create new marketplaces. And as we are seeing out our right center, which is not open to the public, there's one hall which is only dedicated to the agents, and it's 600 tables in one hall, nobody else is allowed in. This marketplace, it's usually booked out after 2 weeks, so we have to find more space now, because the rights, it's exploding, what you can do with content which originates in publishing.
That's very interesting, and I think it connects with the idea we had when we thought of this conversation, that books, not so much as products, but as ideas, ideation, and to use an old word, concoction, that is the way you concoct them, you think of them, and so on, are democracy. You suggested that, to call this conversation, books bring democracy.
It's not the books, it's the idea of the book, the storytelling. What I said about the idea of enlightenment was the first idea. Or if you look into this, I don't know whether we have some paintings here, but usually a duke, a prince, a king told an artist, paint a portrait of me. It was not the artist saying, I have to paint. It was always different with the writer. Write my biography, you can still tell if you're an actor or something, this is happening. But usually, I think storytelling, it's a very lonely activity. You sit there for 6 months, how long? Longer? It depends. I know some people who take 6 to 7 years. And then you want to get this book being published, and then maybe nobody wants to read it. A lot of effort, which went nowhere. On the other hand, you sell millions of copies. This could happen as well. But what I want to say is, this storytelling is a core of a lot of cultural activities. And it also means that everybody has its own voice. And if I read a book, I read it my way. You might read a book completely different. So we are multiplying ideas by reading. And I think that's the idea of democracy. Everybody has a voice. I have to listen to the other voices, and I have to accept that there might be more voices than mine agreeing on something. I think this is very important. And therefore we need books and storytelling. So it's a means of democracy.
So it's a opening to the public opinion, to the public. And publishing is the public, and the public is beyond absolutism in a way. So it brings it back to Frankfurt in a way, to Habermas and
this brings it back to the Frankfurt School. But again, you can also use content, storytelling to influence people. Which brings me back to what I said before. You have to be able to decide what's good for me. You have to be able, It's not just listening to Mr. Musk or Mr. Trump. Everything's going to be fine, we have some taxes, and then you become rich. It's not this easy. And books show you that the world is not easy, that the world is diverse, challenging, whatever, and that you have to make up your own mind and you have to find your way through this complex world.
Thank you very much. Juergen, thank you.
Thank you. Grazie mille.
Thank you very much, especially our guest Juergen Boos from Frankfurt, for bringing to us this really global perspective of book fairs and the important role of publishers. Thank you for sharing your experiences and your information with us. Before leaving, I would like to draw your attention to our book table, where you can find, among other things, also books from Christoph Magnussen, who's sitting in the first row, but also one of our series, the Quaderni, with the contribution of Jan Assmann mentioned earlier. So thank you very much.